Well, I'm excited. I get to preach this morning. I love to do that. You guys know I love to do it. We've been seeing some great things in youth ministry. We had a blast on Glow Night. It was one of the craziest things that we do all year, and it's like the one time you just turn all the lights off and go nuts and turn on black lights, and what happens. It's just a ton of fun. So we had a blast, and we saw a couple people accept Jesus for the first time. We've baptized some people. It's absolutely incredible what God's doing in the midst of what continues to be COVID-19. For a while they were like, it's almost over. No, it's not. All right, we're almost there. No, we're not. Like, it's just like every time we think we're almost there, something else happens. And I acknowledge that this morning. I know a lot of times when we walk through life, we're just really stressed out because it just seems like one thing. Have you ever felt like one thing after another just piles up on itself? And after a while, you're like, if this is Jenga, we would have lost already. So I don't quite understand what's happening. But today I want to share a little message with you. You guys are used to being like extremely loud and extremely insane. And insane is not a loose interpretation of that word at all. That's absolutely accurate. But I am excited to preach today, and I'm going to share a little bit about just plain Jesus and what he means to our lives. Because I think sometimes with everything going on around us, it's nice to say, hold up, I'm going to dump all that off to the side, and I'm just going to focus on Jesus. I think that would help us out a lot just to focus in on Jesus. And so no matter where you're coming from today as far as where you're at spiritually, how you feel in your head or physically how you feel, just know that Jesus loves you and that today is an opportunity as any other day as we hear his word, as we respond in the altars, as we worship. It's an opportunity for Jesus to show you who he is. And so I hope today that he will do that. But if you have a Bible, turn it to Matthew chapter 16. It's a familiar passage for those of you who have been in church for a long time, and if you haven't been in church for a long time, it's a little less familiar. Real quick, while you're turning there, if you're watching online, do me a favor really quick. Go to trinitynwa.com, and you can fill out a little form that says plan your visit. Even if you don't plan on visiting us in person, what you can do is fill that out so we can get to know who you are and try to get in contact with you and just say thank you for being a part of our church, even from Facebook and YouTube land. We're so glad you're here. If you want to give online at the end of service, remember, you can go to our website to do that as well, or you can text to give. And so those are kind of the caveats I need to get out. But I want to tell you a story, not just about my life, but about how your life looks when Jesus is in it, when Jesus isn't in it. So the title of my message today is Story Time. Everybody say story time. There's so many ridiculous things with story time, and when you look up what other people are using for graphics for story time, every preschool on the planet pops up on your Google search, and it's like, it's just a bunch of fun ABC 1, 2, 3s. And so I realize story time is a pretty prevalent thing, and we all have story time. We have an outreach when the world isn't upside down called Story Time, where they're out on Dixon Street telling people about Jesus. Phenomenal outreach, and they serve Onyx coffee, so it's a win-win. But Matthew chapter 16, I'm just going to read verse 15. It's a real quick passage. If you know it, great, read it again. If you don't know it, I encourage you to read through this entire story. Jesus had just got done dealing with the Pharisees and the Sadducees, who were a religious group that were causing a lot of problems and were very legalistic and not so nice, I guess would be the nice way to say it. They were not so nice. But Jesus then leaves that group and goes and spends some time with his disciples. And his disciples begin to say, hey, all these people saying you're the Son of God. That's cool. And Jesus is like, okay. But who do you think that I am? And so they begin to go through a list of things. And I imagine sometimes in the Bible, not every response from every disciple was recorded, because why would you record 12 separate responses? So they record a couple of responses. You can imagine some of them may have said some other things. Some of them may have said pass, because you don't want to get the answer wrong when the Savior of the world is talking to you, asking you, who do you think that I am? I'm good, man, pass. Like, I don't want to get involved in that. That doesn't sound like a fun moment for me. But then he presses them, as it starts in verse 15, he pressed them and said, how about you? Who do you say that I am? So as I go into this message on story time, I wanted to start and just tell you a little bit about my story, okay? Some of you may have heard my story. Some people in the youth group know my story. I was in church like most of my life, okay? But it's kind of different than the way other people are in church. Some people are in church with both parents, serving God, loving Jesus. My story's a little bit different. I've been in every denomination you could possibly imagine. So I have a rare perspective when I preach, because I've experienced the goods, the bads, and the uglies of all of them. I mean, I've seen all the goods and the bads of it. I lived in a city where over here on one block, it's First Methodist, and then one block over here, it's Grace Methodist. I was a member and a constant attender of First Methodist, but my mentor was the pastor of Grace Methodist. You can understand that's a little weird. But it was really neat to be able to be in a bunch of churches. But the one thing that was prevalent in my life is that I was a product of divorce. My parents got divorced at a young age. I remember coming home and mom saying, hey, we're going to go over to our friend's house over here. You can't be at home. Dad's not there, and he's getting his stuff and heading out. And so as a kid my age, I clearly knew what was going on, but it took a massive mental toll on me. I'm the oldest son. He shared his love of WLLR country with me. I hate country music. Just sorry for those of you who love it. I am not a country fan, but my dad taught me a lot about country music. The reason I'm a Minnesota Vikings fan is because my dad's family is from Minnesota, right on the Canadian border. They taught me to love the Vikings, so I still carry that love for the Vikings. But I was a product of divorce, and I was in a product of divorce in the sense that my dad moved away and never came back. And so the last time I talked to my dad, I was 12 years old, and I remember him calling on the phone, and he kept calling me his brother's name. He thought I was his brother. So he kept saying, hey, I miss playing catch with you, hanging out with you, and just began to babble on about all kinds of nonsense. Clearly, my alcoholic dad was very, very drunk, and that's basically it. The last news story I read about my dad was he was high and in a van. They flipped the van on a lake. It skid across the lake, and then he got arrested. He's perfectly fine, but it got arrested. And then I get random Facebook friend requests from him, and then no contact. So I probably a lot of you can relate to that story. Some of you may not be able to, but you know it takes a huge toll on your future dealing with that in your head. And then it also teaches you, I always look at it as a positive thing where it teaches me how to be a really good dad because I know how to be there for my kids. But my dad was alcoholic and struggled with a lot of things, and I still pray today for his salvation, but more things about me. I was poor, really, really poor. My mom was an amazing hard worker, but we just never could quite get ahead. You guys know what that's like. You just can never quite get over the hump and get where you need to be. And I remember going to the grocery store on my bike, going to Aldi and checking out with food stamps. And then my friends would walk in and see me checking out with food stamps, and they'd snicker at me. Those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, it was not a debit card that had money on it. It was paper food stamps. Anybody relate to that? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Y'all remember that? I used to walk in like, make it rain. I thought I was cool because I thought it was real money. I didn't know what I was doing. So I thought I was really cool. And I remember our big treat, my mom would do anything she could to try to bless us. And I remember our big treat was the pink cream soda from Aldi. Now, those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, sucks to be you right now because that drink was amazing. I absolutely loved that cream soda, but I remember going home with grocery bags. I really did walk to school, walk back every day. I remember all this stuff. For those of you, some of you, your first car was a really epic, sweet car. Mine was a poop brown 1989 Plymouth Grand Voyager minivan, which I thought was awesome. I remember waxing that thing to take it to a homecoming dance. I thought I was the bomb. And I pulled up to my friend's house. They all said, this what we riding with? I'm like, what do you think I'm riding with? Do you think I just ordered a limo and I got the money to do that? And so I remember how much fun we would have. I was in drumline my entire high school career, and we once shoved all 36 members of the drumline into that van. And I remember just driving through the parking lot like this, just driving, thinking I'm going to get in trouble, but I'm 16, I don't care about anything. And I remember the band director, Victor Bianchetta, walked out, and he looked at me, and he just did this and walked away. Because he knows this guy can't clearly be this stupid, but I'm going to let this go. But it was a lot of fun. I've spent a lot of my time in smaller towns, in bigger towns, and in between towns. I've moved several times. A lot of you guys can sometimes look at when a preacher talks and thinks, they can't possibly relate to me. They don't know what I'm going through. But a lot of times we do. I've been betrayed a lot. I've been backstabbed a lot. I've had people say a lot of really messed up things about me, and I still to this day don't always know why. I deal with an autoimmune disease. That's why I wear this bracelet. If you guys don't know what type 1 diabetes is, it's not type 2. It's very different. Look it up. Learn about it. It's something that I've dealt with my whole life. I've woken up in the back of ambulances. I've woken up on my bed with EMTs being like, get the needle in there. Are you okay? Who's the president? What's happening? And I'm just like, I don't know, man. Because I'm blood sugar's 15 and I have no idea what's happening. I've been in a place where I didn't have a lot to make it on, and I've been in a place where I've been okay, and I've been able to pay my bills just fine. I've been in both situations. I've preached amazing sermons, and I've also preached funerals that are so devastating they still won't leave my mind to this day. One of those stories is a little kid who died of cancer, and I remember going to his house every day and talking to him and spending time with him and praying with him, believing for his healing. And then his healing looked a lot different than what I thought it was going to look like. And I can follow that funeral I've been saying that I've seen big answered prayers, and I've seen prayers that are answered a lot differently than expected. When you go through your story, can I warn you? Don't ever say God didn't answer my prayer. Understand that God answered the prayer differently than what you thought was best, and that's probably good that he did, okay? But I do know this, my story and your story bring us here because we have one distinct truth that can change all of it. We have one distinct truth that can unite all of us. We have one distinct truth that can cause a difference that can be remembered in every life for eternity. And you know what that truth is? I got Jesus. I got Jesus when I was like 13. Granted, I knew Jesus when I was 5 when they do the blessings and they baptize you, but I didn't know what the heck was going on. I was too young. I was just looking. I remember communion. I'd be like, ooh, crackers. That was just me. But when I was 13, God radically messed me up in a way that I've never been the same since. But I do know that the common denominator in every good thing that has happened in my life is that I've had Jesus backing me up. I've had Jesus guiding me and walking me through that. So the gospel is actually the story of, does anybody know? It's the story of Jesus. The gospel is the foundation of your story, and the truth is, it's the foundation of mine. Due to the love and the actions of a God who truly loved me, I have an opportunity to make a difference in my community, and that difference will continue to be as big as I choose it to be, because I've got Jesus. But why is it that I can make a difference with my story? Because if I share the gospel, all I'm doing is sharing my story. A lot of people have a really hard time sharing the gospel. I don't know, Brad, if you've had people like, I really don't know how to tell people about Jesus. Just tell them your story, because a lot of times your story is the only thing that makes sense to them. Telling them about something that happened 2,000 years ago in Roman and Greek society, they're not going to understand what you're saying. But if you tell them, I was lost, but now I'm found. I was hurting, but now I'm healed. I was addicted, but now I'm free. When you start to say those things, all of a sudden your story becomes the difference the world needs. See, and a lot of times we have a story and we look at it as, well, what's the call of God on my life? Have you ever asked yourself that question? I just don't get it. Like, what's the call of God on my life? People spend so much time looking for the call of God, they miss all the time they had to share their story with their friends, with their family, with their neighbors. See, we look at it and we think of these big, elaborate things, all the while discounting the fact that our story changes the narrative of the world we live in. The world becomes increasingly dark because the church becomes increasingly quiet and won't share their story. Your story is a difference maker. Your story can change things. We spend all our time trying to do big things, accomplish huge tasks, put on big events, and we forget that simply living out and sharing our story could change the world. You hear it from pastors all the time. They'll tell you, you can go and change the world. Have you ever heard that? You're going to change the world. I believe in you. 10 years later, you're like, I ain't changing nothing, man. I don't even want to change my clothes. I'm good. I just want to go back to bed. But the truth is, stop trying to find some elaborate thing. Stop trying to get called to Africa. Stop trying to plant a church. Stop trying to start the biggest Bible study the world has ever seen. Just tell somebody that Jesus loved you and he wants to love them too. Just sharing your story is the thing that potentially changes the world. And what I find is that people so often get tired of following Jesus, or they get tired of trying to change the world around them because they think that it's their job in the story writing process to hold the pen that narrates the world around them. They're so busy trying to hold the pen of the narrative instead of putting it down and letting Jesus hold the pen. Why is it that we have developed in our church life such a staunch arrogance to think somehow we can write a story that we have no power to write? God is writing in languages of hope and peace and love, and we are sitting there trying to hold the pen up. I imagine it's like this giant. Listen, this is my head works. I see this big 10-foot pen that weighs like 400 pounds, and these guys are like, I got this, man. I'm going to write this story. And sometimes the story takes a really hard time to write because you were never supposed to write it in the first place. The pen that writes our story is heavy sometimes because it was designed to be held by someone much bigger than us. Y'all hear me? You ain't supposed to be holding the pen, man. You ain't even supposed to be bracing the pen up. What, do you think Jesus needs your help? Please. Writing a story without God is almost like writing on your arm. Have you ever tried to write something on your arm? How many of you grew up in the day where you didn't have something to write all your notes down in? Your pencil broke in class and you're just like, don't get up. You know what I mean? Because they actually make you sit in your seats and you used to have to get out your pen. Anybody remember that? All the cheaters in the room being like, yeah, that's where I put all my answers, like right there, woo! But have you ever done that before? You try to write something on your hand, and then a day later you look at it and you go, no! I wanted that phone number. No? Okay. All right. Nobody's been there? Someone tells you something extremely important, you start writing it down. Then you take a shower and go, why did I do that? It's gone. You're just like, I'm clean. I want to be full of pen. The truth is when you start to write your own story, it's just like that. You're writing a little message on your hand, but the truth is when you write a message, it doesn't have the ability to stand up to the pressure. It doesn't have the ability to stand up to the heat. It doesn't have the ability to stand up to the stress and the strain that the world's going to put on you. Because God never told us, hey, write the story. I'll make it easy for you to finish. God said very simply, I'll write the story. You just trust me. So we spend all this time writing the story on our hand, being like, okay, God, I got this. I'm going to go change the world. No! Like that's just what happens. The stress, the pressure, the speed of the world around us washes the writing off like sweat on your arm. But the truth about God, God's writing is eternal, so eternal that you can't even get a little, what do they call those when you put a tattoo? They have a way of like removing it, but it leaves a scar. God doesn't even do that. God's writing is so purposeful, it's so eternal, and it's so direct that when He writes, His is eternal and ours is temporary because we see now and He sees eternal. It's amazing that the author can see everything, but the subject wants to write the story. Maybe y'all didn't hear me. It's amazing that the author can see everything, but the subject can only see the now, but the subject thinks they need to write the story. Well, I know how to fix this. I got this. I'm good, God. God's like, okay, I see it all, but that's cool. I know all, that's cool. Omniscient, omnipresent, whatever. That's cool. You do you. So I would ask again, why do we constantly feel like we are writing the narrative when God is the actual author? So I got to ask myself, what does the Bible say about the story being written through Jesus? And some of you may be like, I already know what verse he's going to. I already know, but we're going to Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2. Hebrews chapter 12 to verse 2 says, let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and the perfecter of our faith. Let's go to another translation, the author and the finisher of our faith. No matter what translation you read it in, Hebrews 12:2 always deals with Jesus being the one that finishes the story. There is no form of Christianity in which you finish the story, or you do good enough, or you accomplish enough, or you get better enough, or you get healed enough, or you read enough, or you pray enough. There is no part of the story that you have any ability to really make a change in. Jesus is the author and the perfecter of our faith. See, we push and we stress so hard. We try to fix the world. We try to pray the right prayers. We try to study the Bible enough to be better. And we constantly work and work and work and try to do big enough things, but we find out it gets us nowhere. Why are so many people burning out in the faith? Because they're too busy trying to be the best them they can be. I'm just going to do good. You can ask my wife. I get caught in this nonsense all the time. I'm going to get better. My message is going to be awesome. I'm going to kill it. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to do this. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to go here. I'm going to change their lives. But somewhere over the last 200 years, the church has started to change from he's going to do something to I'm going to do it. And though you don't necessarily think it's important, you'll notice that almost all across this world, we hear Christians saying, I'm going to go do this. No, we ain't going to do nothing. He will do it. It's amazing how verbiage, nouns, adjectives, all of it, the way when they get changed and manipulated, it begins to change the way you think about the situation. We've gone from a place of, oh, well, I meant like, yeah, like Jesus is going to do it. But now we actually believe that we can do it, right? Like, Brad, we set up these big outreaches, and then people, if they don't show up with the right heart and the right mind, they think if they work hard enough, pick up enough bags, hand out enough things, somehow they changed lives. They didn't, though. Jesus brought them. Jesus talked to them. Jesus healed them. Jesus saved them. Jesus provided for them. If we can't write the story properly, then what should we do? It's a good question, right? See, we try real hard and we fail. We see others trying real hard and failing, but those things don't stop you if you allow the Holy Spirit to be your anchor. See, the big problem we have in our story time called life is that we keep trying to fix everything and perfect everything when the Holy Spirit is standing right over here being like, hey, can I take a crack at that? No, look, I'm going to do good for you. I'm going to make you proud. I'm going to do it in a way that, but can I take a crack at that? You see that being reflected into modern parenting and to modern leadership styles where people think they need to impress the one above them in order to make them proud. But the truth is that the person that's above them or Jesus who is above us is simply just saying, how about you just let me help you? Just let me do that. It's okay. You're not going to change my mind about how I feel about you if I help you with this. And we're sitting here trying to perfect everything and fix everything and do everything just right. And the Holy Spirit's like, yo, bro, can I take a crack at that? Like, let me look at that a minute. I love it when I try to help my son. He'll be doing some homework. I say, hey, Dad, look, I already know this. I got this. I'm good. And I get that because when I was a kid, I didn't want my mom to help me because I wanted to prove how smart I was. I knew I was smart. I wanted everyone to know. So I thought it was weird to ask my mom for help. And I see kids doing that all the time. But it's okay. The Holy Spirit is trying to walk you through stuff. He's trying to help you. And if we are anchored and founded in Him, then the truth is we can't be stopped. So the question has to be asked, then what's stopping you? He lives with us, He walks with us, He celebrates with us, He grieves with us. So we should be able to say that He is the best author of our destiny. So the only thing that could possibly be stopping us is us. The only thing that stops me from doing everything God wants me to do is me. Now it can show itself in vanity, pride, all kinds of things, but the only thing that stops us is ourselves. He knows exactly what I'm going through because He planned the starting line, He planned the process, He planned the struggles, and He planned the destination. We stopped preaching that in churches, didn't we? That God actually plans some struggles for you to walk through. That God allows you to go through some things in order to perfect your faith. But we seem to think that God makes everything peachy and wonderful. That's not the God we serve. The God we serve understands what we need to help us grow to the next step. He knows what I'm going through. He planned it. He saw it coming. But somewhere along the line, I began to think, God, it's cool. Give me that pen. Oh, it's heavy. But I'm going to go ahead and take care of this. There's a song that Carrie Job and Cody Carnes wrote, and I'm convinced that every time it says Cody, Carrie probably helped him. It says Carrie, Cody probably helped him. But their songwriting is so similar, but they wrote it. It says, if you listen to it, it says it over again, I'm seen, I'm known, I'm loved by my Father. And she repeats that for 4 minutes. There's a lot of people who are like, why do they keep repeating that? Because it's true and you're not listening. But it's I'm seen, I'm known, I'm loved by my Father. You know how many times I tell my kid to go clean his room, and then we wonder why God repeats, I love you, I see you, I know you. Shush, God, I got it. He's like, no, clearly you're not listening. Do we not know that if we're seen, if we're known and loved by Him, then the rest of our story is going to be amazing? Do we not know that anymore? I worry sometimes that we forget how good He is because we don't allow Him to show us how good He is because we're too busy trying to do everything ourselves. See, here's the issue when you write your own story. You ready? When we try to write our own story, we essentially try to erase the author's writing in order to match what we think will get us to the finish line. We experience the majority of our failures when we try to be in control. And listen to me, and don't take this as like a harsh critique or anything, because notice every time I'm preaching to myself, okay? But I dare to say that if you are in control, then God ain't nowhere to be found. You hear me? If you are in control right now, God is nowhere to be found. I can tell you this from years and years of ministry. I am out of control. But Jesus puts me in line and gives me a path to follow. Some of y'all don't like that. It's not fun to not be in control. I'll tell you a story. When I was getting my wisdom teeth taken out, they had to put me through anesthesia. And for a type 1 diabetic, that is the most terrifying thing to know that you're not in control. You're not. And I remember sitting there in the chair, and I'm like, okay, I'm good. They go to put the gas in my nose. I'm like, stop! No. And I started like panicking. Guys, I'm not scared of medical stuff. Like I get shots all the time. I've literally got pumps attached to my body now. It doesn't bother me. But I'm freaking out, and I just start bawling like, I can't. I don't like not being in control. Can you just pull them out? I'll grin it and bear it. Like, I did not want to be put under. It was terrifying to me, absolutely horrifying. And they had to come in and calm me down for like a half hour before they had to take the gas out and then just give me the needle. The problem with just giving you that needle is when you come out of anesthesia, it's a lot more stressful. But I was not about to have gas. They're like, it's just going to make you feel a little loopy. I'm like, yeah, but loopy is what low blood sugar feels like. And then I'm going to feel like I'm going to die. And then I'm going to feel like nothing good's going to happen ever again. And I began to realize that I was out of control. But is that not an exact parallel to how we act with our Christian faith? Take a step. I don't want to step there. Why not? I can't see what's there. What's going to happen? What's going to go on? Do you need to see? Yeah. God's like, no, because if I let you see, you're not going to do it. And then you're going to end up 3 steps back. See, God writes our story, but he also allows us to choose if the end of the book is what we want or not. Isn't that gracious of him? Terrifying as a pastor, but gracious of him. God lets us choose what the story is going to end like. We choose whether or not we listen. We choose whether or not we follow. Wouldn't it be nice if instead of trying to alter the timeline, we'd rather take a marker and make the writing permanent by our own free will? Because I think that's what God's saying in the entirety of the New Testament. Follow me. Choose this day who you will serve, right? Choose this day who you will serve. Okay, so it's our choice. Follow me. Follow me. And that's what God says over and over again. But when you look at this and you think about this, I've got some dry erase markers. All my interns probably when they saw the dry erase markers come in the room, they're like, oh no. Because I get out of control with dry erase markers. But if I'm trying to write a story, there's a path, right? We've got this path here. And you've got your finish, and you've got your start, correct? Now watch how bad of an illustrator I am. So we're going to go through here. We're born, right? Things kind of keep going this way. We're born. Maybe we go to school. We receive Jesus. We serve Jesus. But at some point, something happens, and we kind of sit back and go, wait, I'm a little low on money, so let's go up here and get this job instead of the job that God told me to take, and I'm going to go here. And then, like, I don't know, I'm not really feeling this, so let's go here, and let's go do this. I don't think this will be a big deal if I get involved in this, and then all of a sudden sin begins to creep in here. But notice what happened. As you began to change and alter God's timeline, you have to literally go through and change the points in which you turn. And you say, no, I don't want that. No, I don't. God's got all these lines set up for you, and you're just going through saying, no. And then 20 years later, you finally listen to Jesus. But you missed like 20 years of your life that you could have done. And it's amazing to me that as we continue to struggle and strive and we continue to believe that somehow God can fix us, you guys are horrified right now, aren't you? It would be really cool if you made the decision to follow him and you said, you know what? I'm just going to do this right here. Straight across the timeline, black Sharpie, I can't erase it, God. I'm going to choose to follow you. I'm going to choose to serve you. I'm going to choose to give everything to you, and I'm going to end up there no matter what because I'm not interested in altering and moving and marking. And as I go through and try to erase the writing, I realize no matter what the devil does to try to stop it, he can't. No matter what I do to try to stop it, I can't. No matter what life circumstances do to try to stop me, they can't stop me. No matter what happens in the world around me, it can't stop me. In the end, I keep ending up here because I made a decision that I'm going to follow the author. See, because here's the truth. Devotion is not defined by simple words. Devotion is defined by people who follow the plan of the author. They follow the design, the storyline, and they believe in the author. Devotion is trust. See, devotion takes this little pen and it puts it down and it essentially sets the control down and simply believes the author and the finisher of my faith will actually author and finish my story. You can declare things all you want, but until you live it out, your declarations don't mean squat. We live in a world where everybody declares things. So one of my famous declarations is, I declare bankruptcy. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about. Some of y'all just chill. Don't worry. But just because you declare something doesn't mean your problems go away. Just because you declare something doesn't mean you're going to follow the path. Just because you declare something doesn't mean you're actually going to follow through on what you said you were going to do. See, declarations are one thing, but devotion means following. Devotion means putting the pen down. Devotion means realizing that the pen was too big for me in the first place. Here's the truth that we need to understand, guys. It's not my story. It's his story being lived out through me. Well, that makes me unimportant. Oh, that makes you very important. The basic misconception of following Jesus is believing the story is about me. But the truth is, my life is not a biography about me. It's an autobiography about Jesus and his grace working through me. Jesus, you write your story in me and let the world know. See, when God writes a story, it's designed to point to the work of Jesus in and through our lives. Listen to these things. My story is written to share. My story is written to be told and retold. My story is written to bring joy and life to myself and those around me. My story is not written to be aborted or terminated early, but it is written to be finished. Your story is not the novel that is shoved to the back of the drawer because the author can't figure out how to finish it. Your story has been designed and crafted to have a beautiful ending, so stop trying to rewrite the parts that don't make sense and allow the author to be a little bit smarter than you. See, when someone writes a book, they write it so someone will read it. Have you ever heard of a book that an author wrote and said, I don't really care if anybody reads it? You spent a lot of money to not care. Books are written so people will read them. Now they are digitally cast onto devices, whatever. Our goal is to share our story and then write a sequel in the lives of the world around us. You hear me? The reason why we follow Jesus, the reason why we let him write the story is because our goal is to share that story as a sequel in the lives of our kids. Right? That's the scariest thing about being a parent. My son's going to be like me. Woo! My story is designed to be a sequel in the lives of those who are listening today. My story tears down fear, sadness, hopelessness, gives me purpose, joy, courage, because it's the story that is written about him watching over me. So if it does that for you, it's going to do that for others. But I think I need to take a real-life minute and just really talk to those, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook, because over there, on YouTube or Facebook, I know that you're facing some things, and there's some of you sitting with me here today that you need to understand that there's a lot of these people that may have considered ending the story and closing the book early. It's going to get real serious for a minute, so if you're not used to this side of me, I'm sorry. But all of what I'm saying is something that you who feel like your story is over, everything that I'm talking about, it's not something you're excluded from. It's something that you've been included in. All the hurt and the pain, all the fear, the anxiety, all the sadness, discouragement you find yourself in, all the bad decisions, terrible life turns, unexpected chaos, it's not enough to write off your story as not being finished. It's still capable of being finished. God's still writing. God's still drafting. God's still planning. So don't spend every second of your life staring at the parts of your story that bring pain. You acknowledge it, you deal with the pain, and you move on. You don't continually spend your life staring at every second that brought you deep and insane pain. You might be watching online right now and say, look, dude, like, my life sucks, man. Real talk. Sorry, guys. If you don't like that word, I apologize. I found out apparently that's cussing. I didn't know that, but it is. Okay. I'm learning a lot about preaching, so. But you can't stare at those things that bring pain. You can't believe as you sit there in your chair or your couch and believe that your story's not still being written. And whether you're sitting in the chairs here thinking the same thing, like, I don't know, man. I have so many messes, so many terrible points. I have so much discouragement, so much pain, so much insecurity. But can I tell you what I do when I feel those emotions? I refuse to allow them to be the focal point. Every time I feel pain and hurt and insecurity and anxiety and stress, every time I feel it, every time, I don't run into the corner and hide where I just sit and wallow in pain. Your pain is justified. Your pain is understandable, and we get it. We acknowledge your pain, and we want to help you through it. But the longer you spend staring at the miserable points of life, the quicker it becomes the reality of the rest of your life. You have to focus back to Jesus. You know how I get through those moments? Because even today, 34 years old, I still face those moments in my life. Some of you are older than me, and you say, I face them too. But every time I face those moments, I remember, do you remember when Jesus walked into your life? That'll get you. It'll help you through. See, I have chosen and I have established that I will always look back to Jesus when I feel as though I can't be successful or when I can't be pulled out of the rut that I'm in. Hear me today, and if you take notes, write it down. There has never been a story that can't be turned around. There has never been a story that can't be turned around. So much so that people in the Bible were dead, and Jesus is like, nope, come on out. There has never been a story too far gone that God can't turn around. You are not at the end of your life. And we're all here seeking the same love, the same acceptance, and the same redemption that you are. See, the danger is thinking that in this part of your story, you were abandoned, but that is the most dangerous and the most evil lie the devil whispers in the ear of those who feel alone. He'll tell you you're the only one facing it. He'll tell you that you can't get out of it. He'll tell you that you were abandoned, and he'll tell you that in the most dangerous parts of your life, God was gone and nobody was there for you, but it's just not true. It's just not true. Your story is surrounded by people who love you, who believe in you, and who pray for you. You don't have to acknowledge that we're here for us to be here. And if you have to be acknowledged to be there for somebody, find another way to serve Jesus. This ain't the right way. We're here because we know people need love. We know they need the same acceptance and the same security that you feel in him. I can guarantee that in your darkest moments, there was a friend, a pastor, or more than likely mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, brother, sister that were probably praying for you when you didn't even know it. I know countless times I'll have something crazy happen in my life, and then someone will be like, hey, dude, I was praying for you. I'm like, that's cool. I don't want you to know what you're praying for, but I'm grateful. See, if I can remind myself that he's always there, then I will be encouraged to live fearlessly for him. Listen to me. I'm going to say a word that triggers a lot of church people. I'm going to say the word revival, but I want you to understand what the word means. Revival is not a big blowout fest or a scheduled service. Revival is the return of the true author to the timeline of the story. Revival is when the author picks the pen back up and says, hey, let me get you back down here and let me move you this way. What does that mean? It means you're brought back to life. We awaken when he has given full reign to awaken us. And when we allow the Holy Spirit to be in our lives, everything that we needed, every hurt, every pain, every insecurity, every time we felt like my story's going the wrong way, it's going the wrong way, I'm going to keep letting it go that way. And then the author says, how about you let me back into the story and let me finish writing? Because when you let him finish writing, all of a sudden your story begins to make a little more sense. See, we run into a lot of confusion because we're trying to write our own story. We're trying to walk out our own faith. But God never told you to do that. God told you to allow the Holy Spirit to walk with you, and he told us to not do anything unless we do it together. Revival is the return of the author back to the story. This is what you need to do. You need to take your hands off the pen and see the power of God begin to fall in your life, even right now in this second. Revelation 12:11 says this, they conquered him by the blood of the Lamb, that's Jesus, and by the word of their testimony. That's your story, friends. That ain't someone else's story. That ain't the angel's story. The angels don't got a story. God created them, they worship. You have a story. And you conquer the enemy, the devil, all his schemes, all his nonsense, and even your own stuff. You conquer it by the blood of the Lamb, that's the sacrifice of Jesus, and by the word of your testimony. That's God moving, living, and working through you. That's how we conquer. That's how we move forward. For they did not love their lives in the face of death. You know why they didn't love their lives even in the face of death when it's talking about some of these martyrs? Because they were so focused on the moment when Jesus changed their lives that all that other mess that happened didn't matter to them anymore. Knowing what needs to be done takes perception and discernment, but doing what needs to be done takes boldness and courage. And a lot of times when we're looking at the story and God tells us where to go and what to do, we can use discernment, and we can figure out, and we can have knowledge and know what God needs us to do. But boldness and courage is what's going to tell us and give us the strength to walk through those moments in our life when God walks us through some tough periods. It's going to be difficult through life to continue to trust the author, but if we can look away from the struggles and hurts in our life and focus on Jesus, all of a sudden we find out that the hurts and the struggles aren't really as big of a deal as we thought, because in the end, the joy of knowing him is far greater than anything I face here on this earth. I love the book of Acts because Paul goes on in chapter 20 to begin to talk to the church. You can go read it if you're at home. If you're here, you can mark it down, Acts 20, 22 through 24. He begins to talk about all the bad things that are about to happen to him, but then he continually reminds them that I have this urgency to go. I have this urgency to share my story. I have this urgency to let God finish it, for me to walk it out, for me to share it, for me to give it to a world that needs it. And the truth is, he writes our story so we can share it with those who need to hear it. I want to tell you a few quick things. We're filled so we can pour out. You know that? Have you ever had a full cup of water? You've ever had a full cup that's it's like a cup of water that has like lake water or something in it, and if it sits stagnant, have you ever seen what happens to it? It's nasty. Like all the bacteria in it stuff begin to ferment, and it gets really, really gross. But the truth is we were filled so we can pour out. And when the liquid has nowhere to go, when the story has nowhere to go, when the story has no direction to head to, the water gets stagnant, the story becomes stagnant, and the life begins to torpedo because we stop doing what we're supposed to do and letting him continue to author all the way to the point to walking through our lives and then walking it out and sharing it with other people. See, he's calling all of us. He wants us to go. There's a story that the world needs to know, and there's something more than the mess that they see around them. But I worry that we think it's not us who are supposed to go. It's not us who are supposed to speak. My story's not that great, man, but it's going to speak to somebody. It's going to speak to somebody. It doesn't really matter who you are today. The story Jesus writes in your life reaches into the depths of the community, and it requires us to reach out and find people that our story connects with. God writes our story specifically to connect with others so that we can connect them to Jesus. Everything I've faced, I guarantee someone else has faced that exact same timeline. And you're going to meet them one day and be like, oh, that's weird, dude. That's weird. But that story allows people to find Jesus. It allows people to know how much he loves them. It allows people to see that, wait. They walked Adam through that? Oh, Jesus got me. I'm good. This is going to be good. I'm excited. I got to ask you this. As you look at your story and as you process what you're supposed to do as a Christian, I got to say this, church, are we simply a organization, or are we actually a transformational power that has a story to share? Because I worry sometimes, right? Trinity Fellowship, LLC or whatever, Incorporated. I can't remember which one it was. I think it's Incorporated. That doesn't make any sense, LLC. But it's like Trinity Temple or something. And that's great. We're incorporated. We have to set ourselves up as that. But the truth is that's not who we are. We're a transformational power that has tons and tons of stories waiting to be shared with every neighbor of this church, every neighbor of this community, every person who's worried and anxious and fearful, every person who has walked through a lot of what you've walked through. They need to hear that you made it so that way they know they can make it too. He calls us now, but we choose to listen. And my question is, can we take, this is the permanent pen, so ignore this, but can we take the pen? Can we do this? Can we just take the pen right now and just say, God, you be in control. God, you take control. Look, I don't even want to look at this, God. I'm not interested. I don't want to see the direction. I'm just going to pray. I'm going to follow. I'm going to follow blindly. He calls us, but will we listen? Will we drop the pen and let God continue and finish writing our story? So I'm going to have the worship team come up, and we're going to spend a couple more minutes in worship before we go because it's me, and you know I'm going to do it. But I'm going to ask you a few questions because I think there's some things we got to process through when we're talking about our story and how important our story is. Your story was not designed to be written and executed by you. It was designed to be written, executed, and made by God and God alone. And somewhere along the path, you walked out on that. You stopped listening to God. You stopped following his story. And you just began to kind of run your own path and do your own thing. And you kind of missed out and realized. And now you look back at a few years and you realize, man, I really did. I tried to be in control. I tried to own the story. I tried to direct the story. I tried to make the story whatever I wanted it to be. I tried to go where God was wanting me to go. But I realized I wasn't even listening to God. I was just doing whatever I wanted. And some things begin to sneak in, and you realize that you've had this pen in your hand the whole time. And when you look back at it, you can see where you began to erase some things and where your life kind of got off kilter. And guys, it's time to do this. It's time to come back to the original timeline. It's time to let the author back into the story. Do you know why big things happen and why major anointings and major breakthroughs happen in churches? It's not because some cosmic thing aligns or the moon is here and the stars. None of that matters. What happens is the people realize it's time to drop the pen. And it's time to let the author back in. And it's time to allow him to guide and direct me. So everybody's eyes just kind of closed. And if you want to keep your eyes open, that's fine too. I don't really think anything about our decisions to follow Christ have to be secret. But you've had the pen in your hand, and you've been holding it for a long time, and you're like, dude, I've been erasing and dodging and moving and cutting left and cutting right. And you know what, Adam, I think it's time that I turn my entire story back over to Jesus. It's time that I drop the pen, and it's time that I turn the story back to Jesus. And if that's you in this place, you say, you know what, man, that's me. And if you're online, can we do something different online, guys? Can we stop hiding behind our screens and let's start commenting? If that's you, let us know. We want to pray for you. You guys see me on there every week talking directly to you because you're just as important as all of us here. We love you. And if you've been holding this pen for too long, and it's time to drop the pen, and it's time to let God back into the story, it's time to let the author start writing the story again. I know there's so many in here that you would say, you know what, that's me. And you say today, I need to let the author back in. I need to let him write my story. I need to stop trying to write it on my own because I keep messing it up. I can't figure out how to do it right. And I need the author to take control again. I need him to guide me and direct me and walk me where I need to be. And maybe you've gone so far to the point where you said, you know what? You've actually considered, my story can't be turned around. It can't be executed properly. It can't be fixed. There's no way to get me back on that path, Adam. You don't know what I'm going through. You don't understand what I'm facing. I may not, friend. But I'm here because God anointed me to know that he knows. He anointed me to share with you that he sees you, that he understands your pain. He was betrayed by the people he tried to love for 3.5 years, and they put him on a cross and they killed him because they didn't like what he had to say. But the only thing he had to say is, I love you, kids. Come home. So any stress you've been facing, any major life circumstances that have just turned your world upside down, just like I told that family when their son died of cancer at such a young age, I told them, you know, Jesus still loves you guys, and he sees you. And as much as this is not the story that we wanted to write, God has him in his arms today. And some of you have faced some extreme stories. I can't even begin to understand what you've been through. The levels of addiction and pain, the levels of loss, the levels of fear that you walk in on a daily basis. You know, it may not be easy. It may take some time. It may take some work. You may have to hang out with some of the best people in the world over at CR for a little bit to let them guide you and be a family. You may need to get into a small group that can guide you and direct you. You may need to find someone in the church that you can go have dinner with and spend some time with. But guys, I'm here today to tell you that your story is not over. If you're listening online and you said, you know what, I've actually got the plan. I'm at the point now where I think I might need to end it all. Let me tell you, that's not part of your story. And God's heart is broken for you. He loves you. He believes in you. Even if you feel like no one else in this world does, God does. I believe in you. You don't know me, Adam. Don't have to. All I have to know is Jesus and how he feels about you. And just to know that is enough for me to know that your story is going to be amazing. You just have to believe that you can let go of the pen and let God finish the story. Don't finish it yourself. So all across this room, I'm going to ask you that. If you're at home, I'm going to ask you, if you say today, I've had the pen for too long, man. I've had it for too long. Whether you've had the pen and you just simply need to hand it back over to Jesus and get rid of it and let him be the author of your life, or whether you're going through deep, deep thoughts of suicide or thoughts of harming yourself, or you're going through thoughts of running away from God completely and never looking back. Don't look to other Christians. Don't look to other examples. Just look at Jesus. Look and see the love in his eyes. Look and see that just as this song they're going to sing says, yours is the kingdom and the glory and the power forever. That means that I can't save you, but he can. That means the friends that let you down, the family that lets you down, the closest people in your life that hurt you, they may fail you, but he never will. And the sooner you can see that and believe that and drop the pen and let Jesus write the story, the sooner you can find yourself walking back in a life of freedom and a life of victory.